self-rule so that we are able to manage our own errands within the country, develop our own structures and systems that will guide the country in terms of leadership. And in terms of progression and where we are and where we have come from, a lot has happened in terms of key areas that, as you mentioned, the father of the nation has put emphasis on when he said we need to eradicate poverty, we need to eradicate ignorance, and we need to have a healthy nation. And these are the key areas that subsequent governments from the late President Moi to the late President Kibaki to the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and our current President Dr. William Samoei Ruto have emphasized mainly on how those three areas can be eradicated. These are the poverty eradication. That is where we are talking about issues of micro enterprises, small businesses, and of course creating sustainability in terms of food production, and of course eradicating hunger within the country. Those are areas that each and every leader has been focusing on. Secondly, we have looked at our education system. You see, we came from a very low level of Kenyans who are less educated to significantly great number of Kenyans who are now from one level of education to another know exactly how to read, write, and utilize that knowledge for their daily businesses. We have a lot of challenges, perhaps in the education sector. We have a lot of challenges in the eradication of poverty, and of course, we still have also challenges in the area of health. You know very well, access to universal health care, issues of drugs. We know we have a lot of issues of drugs. Institutions who are developed, commissions or authorities that are tasked to look into specific areas of our interventions. But the challenges is that we have significant chronic disease which is haunting the country, and that is corruption.
Okay.
And therefore, in terms of health, I know we have made significant progress. In terms of education, there is significant progress, including change of education curriculums from previously up to class 7 level to now from 844 to now CBC. So there are progresses that have been made, but we know there are quite a number of challenges that are hitting on that progresses. And I think we will go into demystify as we talk in our conversation on each area where we have challenges and where we are heading to, and how best we are able to overcome those challenges so that we are able to head, not necessarily celebrating Madaraka Day for purposes of a colorful event, but celebrating real life situation.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Engineer, looking at the theme, mostly the theme of this year, Madaraka Day, is more leaning towards affordable health care. This is one of the pillars of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. In his speech, he talked about diseases, and we have made, indeed, we've made some strides in the health sector, but we are not yet there. What are some of your reflections when you talk about Madaraka today?
Well, I have three areas I wanted to reflect on. Number one is politically, in the sense that for the first time we have a head of state and deputy who were born after independence. And I think that's a reflection of how young and vibrant our nation is. Unfortunately, we can't speak the same about the opposition because it's led by people who were born before independence. And probably that speaks of how the opinions vary or how they approach issues in terms of government and the opposition. We see things differently because we have a leadership that is very young, born after independence, Probably the way they approach things is different from the opposition, and probably that is why we are seeing a lot of push and pull between government and the opposition. When it comes to governance, I think I'm excited the fact that Kenyans are very much involved in how the government does its business. We can see with the finance bill, the volume of participation that Kenyans showed in terms of giving their opinions, both pro and against the finance bill. That's a reflection of how Kenyans are involved in the governance of their country. And I hope that energy or momentum can continue in as far as issues, for example, we are discussing about corruption. When EACC launched the health sector report on corruption, you realize that health sector is one of the areas what is bedeviled with a lot of corruption. That the minimum, the average bribe in the health sector is 400,000. Meaning, if somebody has to do business in the health sector and you have to pay a huge sum of 400,000, that is a reflection of a service denied to Kenyans. A basic health service in Kenya probably should cost 1,000 shillings, but it ends up costing 10,000 shillings because of the value of the bribe. So I think one of the challenges that health sector is suffering from is corruption. Yes, the head of state, the founding father wanted health to be affordable, but corruption is making it unaffordable. So I think that's a problem we need to be able to address, especially in the health sector.
All right, before I come to you, Nelson, let's first of all cross over to Embu. But when we're coming back, we often have pomp and color, but some of the Mau Mau that fought for independence, we always forget them and have very big funeral ceremonies for them. Being a veteran for peace, you will tell us how that is panning out today. But first of all, let's cross over to Embu and have some sights and sounds. All the way from Langata Barracks, that is Maroon Commandos there entertaining the very energy and charged crowd that has trooped in Embu Stadium that has been refurbished, looking quite good if you ask me. And of course I have three gentlemen who are trying to give some reflections of the steps that we've made, 60 years of independence. And Nelson, before we went for that entertainment segment, we were talking about how we honor those who fought for the independence. We have seen them, some don't even have land as we speak. And when they pass away, we have some very, very big funeral ceremonies for them, but we should celebrate them while they're still alive.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to wish Kenyans happy Madaraka Day. Madaraka is to mean authority, just like you said. What I do not know is whether Kenyans feel that they have authority over themselves. Independently. Talking about the veterans, from where I sit as the director for the Kenya Veterans for Peace, which is entirely military institution, we appreciate the military veterans bill of 2022. But it's not enough. Like you've said, there are so many other veterans who have contributed immensely for this country to be where it is. And the appreciation has only been seen during the funerals. There should be a reason why there should be the Veterans Authority or Veterans Commission or Veterans, some independent body for the veterans. In civilized economies, like talk about Canada, talk about Switzerland, the UK, the Ministry of Defense is conjoined with Veteran Affairs. Basically, it's a Ministry of Defense and Foreign and Veterans Affairs. which makes it mandatory and easy for veterans to get a benefit from the service of the government. But from where we sit so far, at least for now, we can hear about veterans. Initially, there wasn't any. Even if we are not getting the best of what we are getting, we appreciate the veterans bill. You can imagine it is 59 years down the line before the bill came in place. It means they've been very patient, the veterans. The bill came last year after a lot of discussion and deliberations about the veterans. So we appreciate the government's efforts. Of course, there are those veterans from different levels, not necessarily from the military. We have veterans from the Mau. We have the police who have done a tremendous job. We have the athletes, the sports people who have done a lot of things for the country. So there has to be a recognition, and we appreciate the government for what they have done. And the new constitution is very clear. It has given us an opportunity to appreciate the veterans, not directly as the military veterans, but anybody who was involved in the Mau War. There's a section that gives an opportunity for the person to be recognized even in the near future.
Doc, I think, and I feel this will really resonate with you, because disease is one of the pillars that the founding father of the nation talked about, eradicating diseases. And we've made strides, let's be honest. The 60 years, looking at the immunization programs, looking at how we have set up the health ministry and devolved health at last. But we still have a lot of challenges. Engineer has talked about corruption being one of them, one of the challenges, but we're also having a lot of challenges because looking at the sector right now, it's ailing itself. It's ailing. Sure. And there are even proposals that we have not quite matured enough to transfer health services to the county governments. And some people have talked about the challenges that we're experiencing in the health sector, so that we may be able to fully achieve what we started out 60 years ago. The health should be reverted back to the national government. That would be clawing back the gains that we have already made. I would like you to touch on the disease and the health sector.
Right. In the health sector, as you mentioned it, we have significant progress in terms of improving access to services in the country. We know very well there are quite a number of immunizable diseases that have been eradicated. We know there are quite a number of response agencies to our pandemics. Significantly, you know how Kenya responded to the COVID-19. So all those shows progress in terms of how structures have been put in place. But having said that, it's not all. Much of our health services are in urban centers, and our population largely are in the rural areas. You go to most of the rural areas, you will find there are no drugs in those dispensaries or health centers. And primarily, those facilities are the ones which most of the Kenyans access health services to. Secondly, they don't have significant qualified staffs who can address their issues. Thirdly, access to those areas in terms of infrastructure. For example, a mother is in a labor, probably you want to rush her to the health center for delivery, and there are no roads. Particularly 60 years down the line, we are celebrating independence, but when you look at keenly where we are in some areas, it's like the 60 years is just
the same way that
we found. Yes. Where I was born, you will not find a tarmac, a kilometer of tarmac. Up to today, 60 years of independence. And that is not only, isolated in my area, for example, Madaraka County, but we have all the regions, northern Kenya have no tarmac completely. Recently, we have got a tarmac from Isiolo to Moyale. We have tarmac from Eldoret to Lokichokio. But when you look at all the other areas where we know health services requires 1, access first, 2, infrastructure, 3, drugs, 4, human resource, that is personnel, specialists. If all those things are not in place, then it is very difficult for one to say we have made significant progress in terms of health services or health provision. But having said that, there are a number of gains that has been made at the top level. I mean, the urban cities. We have Kenya Medical Supplies Agency, KEMSA, which is historically now has been hitting the news headlines for reasons that are not very interesting. But in terms of having establishing that agency, the government had an intention of ensuring that we don't get shortage or supplies of medical equipment as well as drugs to our facilities. And they are able to effectively supply all the county hospitals so that services are never interrupted. But when you look at it keenly, as the engineer also mentioned, it's issue of are we really there in terms of knowing what is needed to be done in the health sector? I think we are not yet there. Why? At the top level here, we have a lot of corruption. We don't give a lot of consideration to the rural areas. And until then, we look at that factor of having services being taken closer to the rural areas or the people in the rural areas, then we will always have congestion in urban centers. Mainly one for already we are having congestion because of lack of employment at the rural areas. And the people are just coming to urban areas to look for a livelihood. Secondly, congestion creates, we are creating congestion because diseases are prone to occur or outbreaks. And that's why the burdens of urban centers in terms of health services is too high. But again, when you look at the cost involved in the urban centers, then it is prohibitive, and you're going to find people coming for medication when actually they are no longer able to keep themselves. When they can't keep themselves anymore and they can't stay with that disease, is when they will seek for medication. And when people come for treatment at a later stage, of course that requires hospitalization, it requires specialization, and it requires a lot of medication, and that will be costly. And that's why you see it's getting very difficult for us to make a strike in terms of healthcare services. Finally, on the issue of whether the county is prepared or not in devolving health services, I think we have a setup or a mindset of putting health services into politics. Health services is good for us to just run it as it is, because it has nothing to do with the national government or county government. These are specialized people who have been trained to carry out services, and the county must know what is expected out of them in terms of providing the necessary drugs, equipment, and then of course employing the necessary health workers to those facilities. And they do not require any other magic for those health facilities to be run by either the county government or the national government. The only challenge we have is that at the county level, people use the resources with other priorities. Perhaps, as I always mentioned when we were talking about issues related to the county, is corruption. So you will realize that money that is meant for basic services are utilized for development, and yet you do not have money for development. And the purpose of doing that is to have a kickback from those development projects, and nobody cares about the people that are in the county that require drugs or that will have been given services effectively. And I say, it is not actually about whether the national government or the county government. The bottom line is that we need to have systems that will guide the county government in prioritizing their resources and purposely for the health services.
All right. Thank you. Engineer, looking at eradicating disease, of course we have to better the infrastructure. You are an infrastructure projects specialist. Where are we? Because what Doc has said really resonates with a lot of Kenyans. Some of the hospitals, and especially in the northern frontier, they are quite far They are not well equipped and everything. But hold the thought. Let's first of all cross over to the Embu Stadium. Sarafina Nairobi is currently on standby to give us a feel of what is currently happening at the Embu Stadium.
Bila shaka mtazamaji, karibu tena. Tunakujia kwa njia mbashara kabisa kutoka hapa kwenye ukumbi wa Moi katika gatuzi la Embu, ama kaunti ya 14 ya Embu, ambayo sasa hii ndio kaunti ambayo kwa sherehe hizi za Madaraka, ambapo Kenya inaadhimisha miaka 60, zitakuwa zikifanyiwa katika ukumbi huu na katika kaunti. Na tayari mtazamaji, wakazi wa kaunti ya Embu wamefika hapa, waliweza kufika hapa mapema kabisa majira saa 12 asubuhi, walikuwa washajaa. Na kama tulivyokuwa tumeambiwa na kamishna mkuu wa eneo hili la Mashariki ambaye ni Roticha, alikuwa ametuambia kuwa ukumbi huu utakuwa na watu, ama utaweza kuwa na watu takriban 10,000, na tayari ukumbi huu mtazamaji ushajaa. Kwa wale ambao hawajaweza kufikia muda hii, basi itawabidi waweze kufuatilia sherehe hizi kutoka nyumbani kwao, kwani ukumbi ushajaa, viti vyote vishajaa. Na kwa sasa kama unavyoona ama kama unavyosikia, ni kuwa tunaendelea kuburudishwa na muziki ainati kutoka makabila yote hapa nchini Kenya, na vile vile nyimbo za Kiswahili ambazo zinaendeleza tu uzalendo wa taifa letu la nchi ya Kenya, ambapo tunasherehekea miaka 60 tangu tuanze kujitawala kutoka mwaka 1963. Mtazamaji, ni siku ya kihistoria kabisa kama tulivyokuwa tumekujuza hapo awali, kwani Kenya iliweza kuingia katika utawala wa kiimla mwaka 1890 katika ule utawala wa Waingereza, na ilipofika mwaka 1920 basi wakaanza kutuchukua kama wakoloni wao. Lakini kutokana na kule kujipigania kwetu, wale mashujaa wetu ambao waliweza kupigania uhuru, basi tukaanza kujipatia ama tukaanza kujitawala ilipofikia mwaka 1963. Lakini hata kabla tufikia mwaka 1963 mtazamaji, katika mwaka 1952 tuliweza kuona kuwa mambo mengi yaliweza kufanyika. Hali ya taharuki iliweza kutanda hapa nchini ili tu wale mashujaa wetu waweze kupigania uhuru, ili tuweze kupata uhuru ambao tunaufurahia kwa sasa. Tuliweza kuona kuwa baadhi ya watu waliweza kukamatwa, wale ambao walikuwa wanajulikana kama the Kapenguria 6, wakiwemo kina Bildad Kagia, Paul Ngei, Jomo Kenyatta, Ochengo Neko na baadhi ya wengine ambao waliweza kupigania uhuru ambao tunaufurahia kwa sasa katika ukumbi huu wa Moi. Hivyo basi Wakenya ambao wameweza kufika hapa wanasherehekea kabisa uhuru huu, na wanahakikisha kuwa ama wanairai serikali kuhakikisha kuwa uhuru huu tunaweza kuulinda kwa njia mwafaka kabisa. Tunaweza kulinda mipaka yetu, na ili pia kuweza kuonyesha umahiri wetu katika ulinzi wa taifa letu. Mtazamaji, hapa katika ukumbi huu tunavyo vikosi mbalimbali vya kijeshi ambavyo vimefika hapa, vimeweza kuwasili tayari. Hapo asubuhi vilikuwa vikifanya matayarisho tu kidogo ya jinsi ambavyo wataweza kutuburudisha sherehe hizi zitakavyoanza kirasmi, na ni vikosi kutoka idara mbalimbali ya jeshi ambavyo vitakuwa vikikwapa pia kuweza kuonyesha tu umahiri wetu katika kulinda taifa hili. Sio tu wanajeshi ambao wako hapa, Wakenya wako hapa, wanadiplomasia wako hapa, wageni kutoka nje vile vile wanatarajiwa kufika hapa. Rais William Ruto vile vile anatarajiwa kuweza kuongoza sherehe hizi, na atakapokuwa anaziongoza sherehe hizi mtazamaji, hizi ni sherehe za madaraka za kwanza kabisa katika utawala wake ambao aliweza kupata, ambapo sasa atakuwa anaziadhimisha kwa mara ya kwanza kabisa. Na hivyo basi hapo matarajio mengi sana kutoka kwa Kenya, kutaka kuona kutaweza kusikia ni lipi ambalo Rais William Ruto atakuwa anawajuza. Tukiweza kuangalia katika sekta ya biashara, ni kuwa Wakenya kwa sasa wanalalamika kuwa baadhi
counties have failed to ensure that we have the best of health services? You're the chair.
I think that move by the KMPDU looks, I would say it is boardroom politics. Boardroom politics to counties to pay the workers is the same one that is believed to be capable of paying the health workers if they go back of money to pay the same staff when they go back to the national government. And therefore, that clamor to take back the health workers to the national government, I think it's a boardroom politics in which should not be entertained at all. Because that cannot happen unless we go back to the actually under Schedule 4. There's nothing you can change unless we go for referendum. But of course, you know, sometimes get away with it. But we are aware that our judicial system is alert. And even as we make this appeal, we know that it's just hot air. It cannot happen. Thank you.
Na mtazamaji, huyo ni gavana wa Tharaka Nithi Muthomi Njuki, ambaye vile vile ndiye mwenyekiti wa kamati mezungumzia kwa mapana na marefu kuhusiana na masuala ambayo yanaathiri sekta ya afya humu nchini. Unakumbuka kwamba hivi majuzi kulikuwa na yale mazungumzo yalikuwa yanazungumzia ama yalikuwa yanataja kuhusu afya kuondolewa katika gatuzi na kuletwa ugatuzi katika hali hiyo, na kwamba inafaa sekta hiyo irudishwe katika serikali kuu. Lakini umemsikia hapo alivyozungumza akisema kwamba kama swala ama kama changamoto ni masala ya malipo na fedha zinatoka katika serikali kuu, basi ni vipi itakuwa hali yao itabadilika iwapo watarudishwa katika serikali kuu. La jinsi gatuzi zinavyofanya, akisema madaktari ni muhimu sana kwa wananchi, na kwamba ni wajibu wa serikali kuu kuhakikisha kwamba iwapo ni changamoto zinazokumba madaktari, si kwamba inahudumia serikali za kaunti ama kuhudumia serikali kuu, bali
All right, first of all, we do apologize for the technical hitch there. Of course, a lot of traffic when you talk about even technology back there, because it was a little bit a small town, if you ask me. I have lived there for a number of years. But we continue with the live coverage there. You've seen some of the top government officials are already there. We have both speakers in the House now, and also we also have some governors as well. The last one there being the Council of Governors Committee Chair in Matters Health, that is Muthomi Njuki, who is also the governor of the vote-rich county of Tharaka Nithi. And there's something that I've noted about the three, the Muthomi Njuki and the two speakers. They've talked very passionately about devolution. That is another freedom that we gained ourselves after we promulgated and started devolution. Engineer.
Well, I was speaking about the freedoms that we have gained as a country, and I was saying for 40 years we could not speak freely as a nation under the Moi and Kenyatta rule. But what have we done with the freedom we have enjoyed with Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta? We definitely made some gains. We have a new government system where we have the county government and the national government. We have a more free press. We have a more engaged public that are able to participate in the governance of this country. But also we also have some challenges that this freedom has brought. We had the worst post-election violence in 2007 as a result of these freedoms not being used or exercised responsibly. We have the Shakahola massacre, which is as a result of this freedom to exercise our religion freely. So, and also we have the war on corruption, which have sometimes been lost because of misrepresented facts on the ground. So I think we have both the pros and cons to these freedoms. We just need to take stock of what have we done with the 20 years of freedom and make the next 10, 20 years of this country much better by exercising this freedom more responsibly, by making sure this freedom is able to bring as much economic, political and social impact in positively to the people of Kenya, and less in terms of how we look ourselves as tribes, we look ourselves as a country that is divided. We want to secede. You know, we are talking every time we have an election, people want to secede. All this because of the freedom we have that we are misusing as a country. So therefore, we need to be very cautious in terms of how our media carries stories, how we engage in the public, leaders and the common man, and also how religion is governed in this country, because we have seen, we used to look at religious extremism as just confined to Muslims, but Christianity seems to be worse, far more worse than Islam, because yes, we have the Mackenzies of this world who have called people to one isolated land, but we have so many pastors who masquerade to be prophets and deny people to go to seek health services and die in their homes and give that wealth to pastors. So this is something we need to discuss and be very, very careful about. And they are hiding under the clothes of political influence because they bring crowds to politicians. And this is an issue that we need to address as a country. The media needs to be very courageous enough to speak about these issues. The Shakahola massacre, if you look at the media, the way they interrogate things, but nobody is able to have the courage to re-interrogate this. Where did this issue come about? This man started his church in 2003. For 20 years, nobody saw this. He didn't just kill people in the last 3 or 4 months. Probably this whole story started for many years. So we need to be able as a country to be able to interrogate this freedom that we have. Where have we failed as a country? And where have we gained? And how can we best move forward with the gains that we've made from this freedom? Yes.
And Nelson, looking at what our leaders there have talked about, they're talking so passionately about devolution, despite the few hitches here and there and the challenges that devolution has faced in the last almost 10 years now. I would like you to touch on that in matters of devolution, how we've been able to carry ourselves. This is one form of freedom, if you ask me.
Yes. Before I comment on that, I want to commend my brother what he said. The freedoms we have misused or not rightfully used. You're in the media. Now we are in the era of fake news. If you see a media house, there are so many other versions of the same media house. And for the ignorant Kenyan doesn't know the difference. You've seen people behaving as if they are not the real people. You've seen somebody pretending to be the president of Kenya in the last year or something. Somebody masqueraded as the president Uhuru and was able to get money from somebody. You know, this is a freedom as well, we are saying. Coming to devolution, devolution has worked. From where I sit, devolution has worked. Why I would say this is because of the testimony I have from where I come from. Initially, I wouldn't go home with my car. I would have to park in the nearby center. Then I walk home. But today I can drive out to my home. That has worked for me. Over the years when I was young, growing up in Kakamega, I've seen the changes happen. When I hear about people talk about healthcare being a national matter, I feel at times not very happy because this should be devolved. Healthcare, like the father said, is not about national government or the devolved units because it's everybody's concern. I got an opportunity to stay in other parts of the world apart from Kenya, and I can tell you it is very sad what you see today. In most of the economies that are doing very well, healthcare is a primary thing. It's not something to discuss about whether we should take it where or it goes mandatory. It's a responsibility for the government. Devolution has worked. And as you can see, the 47 units, there may be so much devolved services, but there's devolved corruption. Because it has come from national level to devolved units. And I was sitting with a friend of mine who said to me, you know, I used 400 million to campaign to be a governor. Then I was asking myself, how much is the salary of a governor?
Even if we say $1 million every month,
Even if you say
cannot make that in the
cannot make it 400 million. So what would the interest of being a governor? Spending 400 million, you can do something different with that money. Not necessarily being a governor. That means there's something hidden that you cannot read in books or write about at home. And I think the Anti-Corruption Commission must now start targeting not only the public scene corruption and start looking at the private individuals, because the elected leaders can only be made corrupt by the private. I do not think that a civil servant will corrupt another civil servant. Most likely there will be a private citizen corrupting a public servant. So devolution has worked, but we have a long way to go. We still have a lot of mistrust within the two units. You can see there's so much delay of funds being released to the county governments. I don't know how that happens. I want to think as a layman why the money collected, it's there.
Actually, I do concur because I also report from the court. Remember, we even went to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Because of the division of revenue.
Yes.
Counties.
Yeah, because
there was a certain amount of money. The national government says we can only give this, and not only that, there is delay in disbursement of this money. So
I don't know. When I do a transfer of Mpesa to you, it comes immediately. If it's an RTGS, the same day. I don't know why it's so difficult for money from the national unit to be sent to devolved units until the governors are now saying, can we go on hold? I was watching the other day the governor for Nyeri saying, look, we are even thinking about telling the workers to not to come, because we can't keep them coming at their resources. There must be something wrong that we are not addressing. Is it the bureaucracy? What is it? Because if the money is there, what is the problem of disbursing the money to the county government? In the worst case scenario, why can't it be then that you collect your money, retain what you can retain, send the rest to the government? I don't know. I'm thinking as a layman. I'm trying to assume that I'm not going to school.
All right. Doc, I'd like to give you one word in terms of devolution, because you also need to predict that all Kenyans are waiting for the head of state speech, because the one guy said that he is really waiting for the president's speech because a number of issues are dogging the country. So I'll give you some moment to reflect on devolution.
Right. I think devolution itself is a game. We must appreciate that. It is totally a game. However, as my brother has put it very well, we have devolved also corruption. Have you heard any of you who is walking around the city or in big towns where people tell you, oh, that flat ni county worker, ni mfanyakazi wa county. Hiyo nyumba ni ya mfanyakazi wa county. I'm wondering, I've worked for the last 27 years and I could not even get a flat all that time, and I have been earning for the last 15 years 7-digit salary. 7-digit salary, not even anyone
not
else.
Even 6.
Not 6. And yet I could not make such a flat. And therefore, problem is we are accepting something which is not normal and normalize it for it to be normal. And I don't know how that chain has completely accepted. So one thing we expect from the president is that the 10 years that devolution has been in existence, I guess 10 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the 10 years that devolution has been in existence, we know quite a number of people who have looted county coffers and made significant gain in their wealth. These are things that are alarming. We may not even think of the national government. Perhaps bigger things are happening there, up there. But again, when it is devolved down there, and down there I look at a common person who does not understand anything about devolution, only wants basic services to be given. Basic, very basic. And even sometimes, if I take you to the hospitals in the rural areas, much of the drugs are not there. The drugs which are there are basic, that we buy them 20 shilling, 10 shilling, 15 shilling, not drugs we buy them from the pharmacies with 1,000 or 2,000 shilling. That tells you the level of their livelihood and the level of their understanding and what basic thing they need. But if my CEC has built a skyscraper in Nairobi or Eldoret, and yet down there there's nothing, completely nothing going on, means there's a curtail between the governors and the executive that he has put in place, and of course the control of the budget is not exceptional because that money passes through them, and then of course finally every year you hear the Auditor General reporting cases of malpractices in the resources. But do we take any action? No, we don't. Then who is supposed to take action? EACC was established, and I think they need to take. They need to change. So we expect the president to come very firm, the way he has came out when there was crisis in Kemsa over the Global Fund resources. He should also direct his troops to do lifestyle audit of all people who have gone through the county management or leadership, and understand if the governor is earning give him 2 million. If the governor is earning 2 million every month, will he make 3 billion? No. My county governor has used 1.2 billion or 3 billion, huge amount of money. I was hearing my own constituency where I was in the race, he has used over 150 million. And now I'm just wondering, if as he has put it very well, if your salary is that, how long will it take you to do that? So that means we are opening arenas for corruption and looting of public resources. And on that note, we expect the president to come out firmly on that issues, and he should end this. The other thing we expect the president to tell us about is the issue of taxation. You know, the tax bill. Yes. I think it's something that the president needs to reflect on. Why we have been paying tax? Every Kenyan has been paying tax. Crying. I tend to think it is not the right time. And therefore, I think his advisors need to tell him that as much as the brilliant idea he has tabled, and it is something that we must do it, can we do it progressively so that we know when Kenyans recover from the drought and the floods that we had, then we are able to, they are not going to feel the pain, and they are able to say, yes, we can pay this tax. Or can we prorate it across certain duration, so that they are able to bite it slowly, not biting them at once. The other thing that we expect him to tell us is the issue of politicking all through from one election time to the other election time. And on that note, I'm looking at the freedom the Constitution has given us. Are we misusing it, or we are using it as per it is required? For example, you cannot, a leader who has been involved in changing this country's constitution, issues of democracy, and then today, at age of his retirement, he says we want secession. What is he trying to tell the young generation who is coming up? Is that this country has no control. There's nothing that controls or boundaries in terms of the freedoms of that we have. And I tend to think even America, where this democracy we have adapted from, don't give you that freedom like that, leeway. And therefore, I think there's a bit of misunderstanding of what is free in freedom and what is where the boundaries lies. And once you get where the boundary lies, we are able to guide ourselves. And objectively, people must bring out issues on the table based on facts and not fiction. The other thing is, politics is not leadership or governance. Politics is about mobilizing troops so that they vote you in. The moment you are voted in, you are property of that voters, those voters. You are property of Kenyans. We pay you your salary based on our tax, and therefore you should provide services, not politicking all through. I think those are areas that I wanted him to look at. Above all, how we're going to open up northern frontier districts where we have now at the age of 60, we still need basic things. For example, water. We still do water tracking during dry seasons, and then we have a lot of flash floods from Ethiopia passing through our villages, and we are not able to harvest that water, and therefore after every 3-4 months we will still go the same way that we were during the drought season. People have lost a lot of animals, all their animals, or people have lost a lot of their properties, farms, product. Let him tell us how he will turn around things in order for Kenyans' basic life to improve. And the cost of living that we know very well is biting now. He should also now explicitly come out what the strategies or measures he wants to put in place, which are immediate measures, intermediate measures, and long-term measures that we expect. That way we are able to think through and say, our beloved president is doing for us this, and therefore we are able to cope with the current situation and move to the next situation. So resilience is what we need.
Sure. And of course, when we come back, Crispus, we will talk about, we will wrap it up on devolution and what exactly we do expect, because Kenyans are quite expectant that the head of state will address some of these key issues, including cost of living and the finance bill that is scheduled for the second reading on Tuesday. And of course, we also be looking at the security challenge. Yesterday, CS Kithure Kindiki was very categorical that the government is hands-on in terms of the security challenges that we have. And we will go back in time. You do remember we had mashifters, but the government was able to deal with them ruthlessly. And now we have another emerging issue of radicalization. We will be discussing that when we come back. But first of all, let's go back to Embu Stadium and listen to those songs.
Tuwapongeze kwa makofi tafadhali wananchi. Wimbo wao ujenzi wa taifa. Mike Getone.
Asante sana mwenzangu Ngaruya. Wanaingia sasa kufunga safu ya matumbuizo kipindi hicho ni wanakogan kochia. Hawa wanajulikana kama Ramogi Cultural Dances. Hapo ndani kuna mzee ambaye mdadisi wangu ananiambia kwamba ana miaka 90. Na ni yeye team leader.
Huyo mzee?
Yes. Mjumbe wa hapa ana miaka ngapi?
Mbunge wa hapa ni kama 40 hivi ama 50.
Pale ndani,
yes.
Huyo team leader,
yes,
wa Kogan Kochia,
yes,
ana miaka 90. Mjumbe hapa
anaitwa
Mukonji.
Yes.
Mukonji, nataka uangalie mzee yako hapo mbele. Huyo mzee ana miaka zaidi ya 90.
Yeah.
Kutoka Kogan Kochia.
Yeah.
Weka macho uwanjani Ngaruya sasa.
Asanteni sana, tuwapongeze kwa makofi, kwa makofi, kwa makofi, kwa makofi. Wanapoondoka tuwapongeze kwa makofi tafadhali. Mike Getone.
Asante sana. Nimepata ujumbe wake ndugu yangu Fanuel ananiambia kwamba wanaitwa Kagan.
Ati wanaitwa
Kochia.
Wanaitwa
Kagan.
Very well, that has been one of the sights and sounds live from Embu. Traditional dance group from Luo Nyanza there, taking their steps there to entertain the crowd as we wait for the chief guest, President William Ruto, who we expect to lead the 60th celebrations of Madaraka Day today. And as soon as he's there, we'll be informing you as well. But also here in studio, we are reflecting on the 60 years of independence and some of the challenges and some of also what we've been able to accomplish in that time. I have Dr. Isaac Hassan, I also have Engineer Crispus Wathimba, and also I have Nelson Sechere, who is the Executive Director of Veterans for Peace Kenya, where veterans have been also, we're expecting a lot of veterans there as well, but they are sometimes the unsung heroes. But Engineer, as we wrap up on the matter of devolution and what we expect the president, of course the finance bill is something on a lot of Kenyans' lips, but we also have a number of issues that Kenyans need addressed, and especially when it comes to the high cost of living. I would like you to touch on that.
Well, I just want to touch on the fact that devolution is with us. We are not going to backtrack from that. We are not going to look behind and say, do we go back to a one government kind of administration? Mm-hmm. So now that we have devolution, we must make it better. We must take stock of the 10 years that we have had devolution. Mm-hmm. What has gone for us, what has been good for us, and what has been bad for us. That which we have been very bad for us, we expect the president to be very firm and deal with it. That which has been good for us, we want the president to build on that so that Kenya can take full advantage of the good things that are coming out of devolution. Mm-hmm. When Kibaki took over in 2003, many people didn't believe that we would have free education, mm-hmm. free primary education. Mm-hmm. But he went and started the program without even enough resources as a country. And today we have benefited fully from free education. Meaning, as a country, it's not that we lack the resources. The challenge is how do we use or maximize the wealth that we have as a country. If we could be able to collect enough of our taxes and make sure there's less loss in terms of how we spend our taxes, we have enough for this country. One of the challenges we have is that we speak a great deal about corruption. If you look at the headlines we had over the last 10 years, there was corruption, corruption, corruption. But there's very few of those headlines showing a single person who has been prosecuted successfully, jailed, and assets recovered and taken back to the public. Very few, very little is spoken about the fight against corruption or fight and a winning. So I hope and pray that this administration will have success stories where somebody who has been found to have stolen public resources is found culpable, is prosecuted, is punished, and those resources taken back to the public so that they can help. So we hope that if this is fought, then when it comes to us asking for more taxes, it will be an easy conversation because we can be able to trust the government with our resources. But as we are now, even if you put how beautiful these levies will look in terms of what they can deliver, but we don't trust the people who are going to manage the resources, it's going to be very hard conversation. We just pray that the government can be able to be as firm as possible with this fight on corruption. Let us be able to be a country where if you're given a public position, you are satisfied with a small salary as it. We are satisfied with the powers that you are given and don't abuse those powers to increase your salary. Because public service does not come with a lot of perks, but it comes with a lot of power. And that power is what is being abused by people to make a lot of money. We've seen an employee of Nairobi City Council who was earning 21,000 shillings, but he used his power as a procurement officer to amass wealth reaching 500 million Kenya shilling. That is where...
In less than 10 years, actually.
In less than 10 years. So that's what we're saying. This public office comes with a small pack, but it comes with a lot of power. So when you use this power for your own selfish interest, many Kenyans lose. We have talked about people running for office and spending millions of shillings for a small salary. It's not about the salary they are going to recover their money. It's the power these offices come with. And when those powers are abused, it's Kenyans who suffer. So if we can be very firm in taming how this power is abused by government officials, then as a country we can progress. Kibaki managed to do that. He was surrounded by people who understand where he is going. Kibaki himself never reflected on making himself rich. He entered office and he served the public. I hope the president can continue with the love he has for the country and very firm on those who are around him who are about to steal or are planning to steal.
And still on government's engineer, this, incidentally, we are in the 5th regime and happens to be the biggest government that Kenya has had since independence. I would like you to touch on that because some people have raised issues, and especially when it comes to the CAS positions. They are saying, we are not doing very well economically, but if we have a bigger government, we will also have avenues for pilferages and wastages in government as well.
Well, you know, we cannot confine Dr. William Ruto to run the government in the same way Kibaki ran it or with the way Uhuru ran it. He came up with his own plan. So we must also give him room to deliver his mandate the way he wishes. And if the constitution allows him to hire as many people as possible, let him do that. But what we need to hold him account is that we have given you the room to hire all these people. What are they delivering for us? Are they able to bring a return on investment? If you look at Kibaki's administration, he went to the private sector, and private sector expertise was not cheap at that time. And he paid them very well. But what did they deliver? They delivered, at some point, a double-digit growth in the economy. When he was putting resources with these people, he was very sure these people will deliver, and they delivered. We cannot complain about Kibaki's administration. We had enough food for our people. We had enough economic growth at our times. Even after going through 2 referendums and 1 troublesome election, the country still growth was there. But we have seen peace in the last 10 years. We have spent 9 trillion on infrastructure, and we are told this infrastructure will be the stepping stone for our economic growth. But that economic growth did not go translate to money in the pocket. So yes, we had a bloated government with Uhuru Kenyatta. We might have a bloated government with Ruto, but the contrast will be probably with Ruto, he might have a bloated government, but delivering in terms of the value for money for the Kenyan people. Kibaki had a small government, but very expensive because he had to bring expertise, but he delivered for the people. So let's allow William Ruto to run his government as he wishes, so that in 5 years' time, we'll tell him, we gave you the mandate, we gave you the room to deliver as you wish, where are the results? But if we still control him and tell him you must do your government as Uhuru Kenyatta was doing, then you are not giving him the powers to deliver as the president.
Let me pick from where engineer has left it, because he's saying, yes, indeed, maybe we may have a lean government, but not deliver. We might have a bloated one, but give it a chance. Nelson, looking at the government as it is, some people have talked about President William Ruto has the best opportunity to become the best president ever. Reason being, he has been in 4 regimes. He was with Moi, he was in Kibaki's government, he was deputy president for 10 years, and now he is the head of state. So he has had around 20 years of being in government in one way or the other. So he is best suited for this job. I'd like you to comment on that.
Yes, I think, in my opinion, President William Ruto has the best chance to be a president that will be remembered for long. Before President William Ruto, we were remembering about Kibaki, because Kibaki made a lot of impact with very little that was there. The only setback that probably President William Ruto is going to suffer is from the surrounding of people around him. Because he's a very brilliant man from where I sit. He is very outspoken, he knows what he needs, but there are so many hindrances that comes in. And I wouldn't want him to be lured into the temptation of what other presidents have gone through from political rewarding that is now going on. I would think that from where he is now, he has nothing to lose by making drastic measures. He has no baggage with him, unlike the former president. Probably he had some people to be very careful about as we are dealing with them. For him, he can do, and I'm very happy with what he did with the previous, recently with the issue of sugar. He basically made sure that all the heads dropped from top to bottom. That is what should be done in equal measure. And that is what was expected from him. He will also want to prioritize on key economic areas. For example, infrastructure. In any economic setup that is going to grow, energy is a very key drive for economic development. There has to be as many incentives towards the energy sector. If he has to promote manufacturing, then the initial stage will be to enhance the power availability to the people. And he has nothing to lose by being tough. That is what I expected from today when he's going to address the Kenyans. He should tell us, look, I'm here, you voted for me. There could be some contests here and there. There could be some people not very happy with the situation, but this is where we are. I'm the president of the Republic of Kenya. Trust me, I will deal this for you. Because, to be honest, if you are given this power today for 2 days, there are things you are going to make. Some obvious decisions. There are things that you must do differently. And don't dwell so much on celebration, because that is what has failed many countries. Because it's a small achievement, you want to dwell on that as an achievement. And also, I expect that today when he's going to address us, and even his people and the leaders who are there, they won't give promises, because now the time for promises ended by election. There shouldn't be an advantage of saying, okay, now we have planned. Now it's time of doing it, because now he's already there. There is every reason why he has to do what he has to do. And we appreciate the fact that he is really acknowledging the rule of law. He is going so much, even if you look at what is happening in the opposition, he is really giving room for some kind of discussion. Like, I know I'm the president, but look, let me hear. They say the majority have the say, but the minority need to have I mean, they may not have their say, but the majority have their way. It is very important for us to listen to every Kenyan. And listening from what I've seen the cabinet doing, I would commend the president, because I'm seeing very few ministers speak in public. That is very good. It's a deviation from the past. I have not seen ministers coming out and telling us things every day. I'm seeing more of people being quiet. You know, there are ministers, we don't even know what is happening with the ministry. There are things going on. And that's very good. And I think that should be a spirit that is, you must encourage to the entire cabinet. Finally, the issue of being a president must never be forgotten, that a president is a state symbol, is a unit. Is a symbol of unity. There is no president for opposition or government, Kenya Kwanza or Azimio. The president of Kenya is a symbol of national unity, and as such, I'm sure that the veterans who came before us, those who brought us the independence, they envisage that one day we'll be having our own self-rule. Self-rule means we are happy with ourselves. Whatever the mud that we have is our own. And he must firmly state that he's supporting peace within this period. And of course, we've not seen much different from what he's saying. Finally, and not the least, we also want him to be tough on corruption. Pronounce himself deliberately that this is not what I would want to hear from my government. Because being a head of state, you are the commander-in-chief. The head stops with you. You may want to blame a minister or the other, but eventually you will say, under my tenure, this is what happened or did not happen. So I think he has the best chance to do something different from the rest of the
Doc, I would like you also to weigh in on the issue of his government, and it's a good thing that Nelson has reminded us that this is the government, the first government that a sitting CS will have his day in parliament and also address Kenyans on exactly what he or she is doing. Still on the same, you saw how the president cracked the whip on the health PS and also on KEMSA, more or less showing that he is more than committed. Yes, indeed, the government is more than about 9 months old now, but we have seen some tremendous steps that the president has taken in matters accountability.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, President Ruto, from the onset of his occupation of the highest office, he set a very clear rules whereby I'll give you the job, you make sure that you deliver as per the requirement of that job. And when one of his officers in the Ministry of Health failed to do his work or her work, then he reacted, and the reaction was very well, and it was welcomed. It was welcomed by all Kenyans, and people viewed him as someone who is a no-nonsense, who doesn't want to have any corruption within his country. But as my brother has put it very well, the blueprint of his deliverables are anchored on his manifesto. So we don't need now to talk about issues of we'll do this or we'll do this. We already know what you promised to do. We know in political campaign times, promises are made, huge promises are made, but government operates differently. Government operates based on budgets that are already forecast, and therefore, and the fact that he was not, the sitting president, or the fact that being the deputy, but he was not given the privilege to be part of the system at that particular time, he did not budget for his promises. And quite often Kenyans think that when the president promises things, all of a sudden, very early in the morning, once he is sworn in the office, he will start delivering. The government don't operate that way. Government has a focus, and budgeting is always, based on previous years. We may be responding to, he may be responding to budgets that has already been established by the other government, the previous government.
Apologies, Dr. But as you can see on your screen, is that that is the official ceremonial car that or vehicle that the head of state is expected to use, and you can see that the soldiers there are on standby, meaning that their commander-in-chief is not quite far, and any moment now we might see signs of the head of state arriving at the Embu Stadium. But for now, the entertainment continues, and we also here in live studio continue to reflect on some of the gains and some of the steps that we have made in the 60 years that we have been independent, and what we also can do better, because we also need to put things and issues into perspective. Continue with your statement.
Right, definitely that's the ceremonial car.
Yes.
And we love it whenever we see it in national function days.
Sure.
Now, it is time to deliver with a clear roadmap. And the clear roadmap the president has put in place is by putting the right people in the right place, first and foremost, because it's not him who will going to deliver. It's those people he has engaged. And if he has bloated his government, for example, adding more human resource to make sure that he delivers his promises, I think, as my colleagues have already put it, I think it is one way that we should give them a freedom. I know opposition will want to shoot him down so that he fails in what he wants, he is expected to do, so that they tell the public that, you see, you have elected a president and he has not delivered what he was expected to deliver. And that's a mentality of people who are not thinking of being nationalist, or people who are not patriotic, because services are for the citizens of this country. It has nothing to do with the leadership of the country. The leadership of the country only ensures or guide that those services are delivered to the citizen of the country. So one thing that perhaps I will expect him to now put a lot of weight on is, of course, he should look for a way of preventing wastages in his government, because that is one thing that is killing us. A governor, for example, let me go to my governor in Mandera. He has no threat, he has nothing. He wants to come to my village in Takaba, and he uses 28, 30 vehicles to come there, and all those vehicles plus all the personnel who are in those vehicles are paid by the exchequer. I don't see why we should need such a wastage. That's a wastage. Yes. He uses his car and two of security cars.
I see also the Attorney General has also arrived. Justin Bidan Muturi is, of course, he hails from the same county. He is also being welcomed into the stadium, meaning that the creme de la creme that we are expecting, the top leadership of the head of state, any moment from now. And as you can see, the security personnel are on standby, meaning that it's only a matter of time before we see the head of state, who we are eagerly awaiting for. Doc?
Right, thank you. So once the wastages are prevented, I think we will be able to keep more cash or more resources into our coffer for purpose of using those resources for other development or other services. Secondly, as we all spoke about it, corruption.
Correct. Also the Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court, the Chair of the National Council on Administration of Justice, Chief Justice Martha Koome, is also in attendance. We are almost there, right?
Right, I can see the high dignitaries, the three arms of the government. Now it's only the executive.
The executive that we are waiting for.
Yeah, that we are waiting for.
Yeah.
We already have the speakers of the National Assemblies. We already have also the judiciary, the Chief Justice, and definitely is the President now to follow.
And also the Council of Governors.
Council of Governors, of course,
Chair of the Council of Governors.
Yeah, but we have been taught the three arms of the government.
Yes.
And now the county governments are not part of the three arms of the government, according to the teachings that we have been given. So if I talked about wastage prevention, then secondly, we have talked about corruption. That must be also completely zero tolerance. Thirdly, he must come up with a strategic priority of his manifesto, saying with this roadmap, we will going to do this and this other phase. I promised we will do this in the next 5 years. Once we get that information on our public domain, then people expectation will be controlled, because they know government don't operate just like a private entity, and therefore everything will be based on focus, and the roadmap they will give us is the one which will going to guide us, and we will be will measure the performance of the government of the President William Ruto based on the roadmap he has given us, based on the priorities that he has set.
All right.
Finally,
apologies.
Finally, I mean, you don't just do all that without goodwill. So we must have a goodwill from his troops. People who really are dedicated and committed to deliver the presidential pledges, and based on the roadmap they have set, they are able to say, this is what we are expected to do, and for us to help the president to deliver his pledges, we must have the goodwill and ensure that every other steps that they take is geared towards delivering what is in the manifesto and the strategic priority that has been set. Therefore, communicating that information to the public domain is also one critical thing. Otherwise, when we are in the darkness, then it gives us a question of asking a lot of what is happening, what is going on, what was he supposed to do, we don't understand what is going on, you know. And then the oppositions are loud in terms of underscoring the government's performance. If you are not able to tell them that this is what they were expected to do, and everything is at a gray area, then the opposition will going to have an upper hand in terms of poisoning the public on issues of negativity in terms of the performance of the government.
All right. Engineer, looking at our country, some have argued that Kenya is always a politicking country, and our elections do not quite represent what a democracy like Kenya, being one of the biggest democracies in East and Central Africa, we are always in politics, and after every election we have to have an issue. I think the only one that we never had any petitions or any of the sharing of anything was in 2003, I think. Yes, and now we have bipartisan talks. Let's talk some politics. And the bipartisan talks don't seem to be yielding any fruits yet. Hardline stance that have caused the two sides actually to suspend the talks indefinitely. But unfortunately, we cannot ignore politics in a free country like Kenya. I'd like you to touch on that.
Well, just before I touch on politics, I just also want to comment on what my colleague said, that it's good for the ministers are a bit quiet. But I also feel like if as much as they're quiet, they need to be seen to be responsible. If you are on the social media handles, you can see there's talk of this opulence that some of these ministers are being associated with, wearing expensive watches, expensive shoes, some watches worth 5 months' salary of a cabinet secretary. That sends a very wrong message. We've seen some of the CSs who are being appointed exposing their expensive cars. That's a sign that money is being misused. So as much as they may not talk much, but as long as we are perceiving them to be misusing the public wealth, that's a very bad thing. So I think he needs to be very firm with the people around him. We have seen he has lost weight. He did not lose weight because he's just sitting there. It's because he's working hard. Yes. And probably he's carrying the whole country alone. Probably the people around him are not carrying the same weight as he's carrying. So therefore, we don't want him to surround himself with a lot of weight that is not necessary. Let him surround himself with people, men and women, who can drive this country. Kibaki was seated in State House, but we knew the country was safe because the people he surrounded himself with, they were able to govern. When Uhuru Kenyatta took over, probably we can see things were a bit different. He surrounded himself with men, he gave them the freedom, but probably where they took that freedom is where we have today. We have a very huge debt as a country and very little to show for it. We don't want Ruto to carry the whole country on himself, because he's surrounded by people around him who are not able to help him drive this country. As far as politics is concerned, I feel like our politics is still has not yet matured. Because if you look at the opposition, the opposition we still have is the one that we had 30 years ago. We haven't changed in terms of the character and formation of the opposition. We still have the Orengos of this world, the Mother Karuas, the Raila Amolo Odinga. We haven't changed the character or the crop of leaders that are either in the opposition. We want to see more of young people coming up and taking leadership in terms of both in government and in the opposition, so that the conversation that is there can also be different. That's the only way we can see our democracy is moving forward. But as long as we still have the same characters over 30 years discussing politics, then that's a challenge for us. I don't feel like we're able to progress.
All right. And Nelson,
Yes.
recognition of heroes and heroines who fought and continue to fight for justice, equality, and a better life for Kenyans, including those who are doing it right now. This is something that we need to step up, because we have some of the heroes and heroines as we speak, and we have seen how we have treated our heroes and heroines in the past, and especially those who fought for, one, the independence of Kenya, and two, for the multipartyism in the 90s. I'd like to touch on that.
Yeah, we have so many heroes and heroines who have contributed to this country immensely. Unfortunately, we are a country that only appreciates people in their death, not when they're alive. You saw the late wife of Dedan being buried the other day, Mukami.
Yes.
You could see the opulence, the people
pomp,
coming,
the color, and the budget as well.
We really like, she fought, the husband was there. But before then, you and me knows, we don't know where she was. We don't know where she was like a year ago, 2 years ago. We know she was around.
Yes.
We have an idea there was some widow somewhere doing something. But we should have not only the monuments, calling the roads by Kimathi Street, Moy Avenue, the families of these people who have fought for the country, they do not enjoy the lifestyle of what they should enjoy. In the US, for example, a veteran, when somebody who has sacrificed for the country dies, the government takes over the family moving forward. And that's something that must be learned from where we are. It is not possible that we only celebrate our heroes and heroines when they die. We must have there's a commission that is in place for heroes and heroines, but there seems to be more of what would I say? It's just something not structural. It's just a name of something, because the lives of these people, you can see what's happening in Embu today. There are so many people who are singing. There were guys who composed the songs for this country. The Mwalimu, I don't know, where is he? We don't know where he is. Unless he dies, we can now find out and say, oh, the guy composed some music for us. You know? This is the time we should be saying, okay, these are the people who have contributed to this, and they must be given a stipend on a monthly basis, regular basis, because they don't have anything else they do. Whoever composed our national anthem or our flag or our devolution things of what we are doing today must be put somewhere. It is very sad if we keep on celebrating our heroes during their death and not remembering that they have families. Today, you know, like this media house we are in today hosts almost all the journalists in this country that have come from this house.
Yes.
Do you have some appreciation that the government knows this KBC, for example, has contributed heavily in the media industry for this country?
And they should, actually.
They should be having something of the sort. The late Kasavuli was a friend of mine. When I went for the funeral, I saw everybody, every journalist from all media houses come and say, this was my friend. It was my friend. But before then, we cannot remember what was it that was being done before. There must be a reason why we must be having these celebrations like Madaraka Day. We must mark it to something a bit more stronger than just having a song and saying we appreciate you and giving an envelope. Today they are seeing us singing, they're artists, comedians. They'll be given a stipend today. After that, they'll be forgotten until next year when they have a new Madaraka Day. You know? It is not what we should be having.
All right. And as you can see on your screen now, the soldiers and the army band have started doing their final steps. And they are exactly entering now the Embu complex, where it's all systems go. That is a clear indication that their commander-in-chief, the president, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, is on his way. As they enter and march into the Embu Stadium, there are also dignitaries have also gotten there. We have all arms of government except from the executive, where we are expecting the president any moment from now. Continue enjoying the sights and sounds from Embu County. Now, Doc, at the end of the day, even if we have the best freedom that any country can have, if our security challenges continue to dog and drag us down, will be a clear indication that we have not yet gotten our freedom yet. We have had several security challenges, beginning with the shifters that we had in the 80s that were wiped out by the government. We also had some extremism where we had some radicalization of youths in Mombasa, Lamu, Kilifi. We also had remember was it called the guys who used to say Onisi Kenya?
MRC.
MRC, yes. Mombasa Republican or something. And after that, we've had banditry. Of course, banditry has been there for quite a while. Should we, looking at what happened in the northern frontier, where Mashifters had almost taken over and they were completely cleaned by the government, should we change some of the security strategies that we have, maybe to get new resort? Because we've had governments after governments, but issues like banditry and extremism have been a big thorn in our flesh.
Right. I think security is a problem mainly on the northern areas, simply because of the porous borders. First, we must appreciate how our landscape look like. For example, Mandera County has two borders. It borders with Ethiopia and it borders with Somalia. When you come to Wajir County, it borders with Somalia and it borders with Ethiopia. When you come to Garissa County, it borders with Somalia. Now, those porous borders cannot be controlled by our security agents, simply because they are vast, as well as access is a challenge. With the introduction of motorcycle, movement and access of bandits has been enhanced, simply because motorcycles cannot be controlled and they use the paths where humans, pedestrians use, and they usually go very far. And you will see someone committing crime here today and then crossing over to another county or another country within an hour. For example, recently, there's a man, a Kenyan, a man who was working in Mandera West, Takaba. He was working in Akware, and his employee, who has been working with him for almost 5-6 years in Kware, just murdered him, buried him in a shallow grave, and picked his motorcycle plus his money, and came to, run away to Kenya. Still, the security apparatus have not tracked that particular criminal and then brought him to book. What is the consequences? Now, the man who has been killed is a resident from Mandera West. The one who has killed him, purportedly have killed him, is coming from this other part of Kenya.
All right.
You remember the issue of... Right.
Just hold on, Doc. Let's first of all have the sights and sounds of what the soldiers are doing.
Basi baada ya kuhakikisha kwamba gwaride liko tayari siku ya leo, ni zamu ya mkuu wa gwaride hii kuweza kuchukua usukani kutoka kwake parade adjutant. Naye baada ya kumkabidhi anaondoka kwa muda mfupi sana aliyopewa kuweza kutoka nje kabisa kujiunga na maafisa wenzake tayari kwa gwaride.
And as you can see that the soldiers are taking their steps, meaning that any moment now the official program will begin. And I'm going to give my guest this morning a few minutes to also reflect on that before we go to the official program. Engineer?
Well, for me, it's just to say 60 years is here with us. As a country, we can't always be reflecting on the worst that has come before us. We need to move forward. And I think move forward is pick up the good thing that this country has built on for the last 60 years and build on it. We have a new generation of young people whose mindset is not as those of us who have lived in the last 60 years. And the dreams and aspirations of these young people depend on how we take advantage of the foundation that we have as a country. And these are the people who are going to make this Kenya great. It's not us who have been here for the last 40, 60 years. It is them who are going to make Kenya different from the rest of us. America is a great nation because of its people. Kenya will be a great nation because of how we build on the capital, the human capital we have today. We have a very huge capital base in terms of human resources. Let's take full advantage of it. Let us build on it, and let's be able to be as a country as responsible as we can be with the resources we have. Let us not be surrounding ourselves with people who are not focused on building our country, but let us surround ourselves with responsible people, men and women who can take this country forward. And that's what I request from the president. Rewarding loyalty is a very good thing, but it can be very expensive. So let him take advantage of the people that he has in this country who can do great things with very little. Not people who can do very little with so much, because they are very expensive in terms of how they reward themselves.
Nelson?
This 60 years should help us to reflect not only for the bad things, but also the good things. But we must not stay there on the reflection table, because a time comes when this day is just once in a year. It comes today until next year again, we have a similar day. We must make deliberate steps, and this is what I'm saying. The president has every reason to do something different. We want something different. Kenyans are a very interesting lot. They forget very fast, especially good and bad things. But if there's a consistent thing that is being done by the president, it is going to be remembered. We remember President Moi for so many things. We can never forget Moi. We can remember Kibaki for so many things, good things. There are so many roads done because of him. I think President William Ruto has a reason to make something drastic.
All right, Doc?
Yeah, it's a time to reflect deeply on the founding aspiration of our nation. That is one important thing. But we should resist people who want to drain our gains. We, Kenya, I always tell people, leave this country and go and visit other nations. When you see those countries, come back and then reflect on where you are in your country. You will find, with exception of the Western countries which are already advancedly developed, we are actually much better than most of the developing countries. And above all, I think we have grown very well in terms of technology. We have grown very well in terms of education. We have grown very well in terms of economy. And one thing I tell people is that for those who want to drain back this country and bring this country down, they should go and see the neighboring countries who have already collapsed. So having a governance, bad governance, is much better than no governance.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed. We have been having some analysis from the morning, just having a reflection of the 60 years of independence that Kenya has enjoyed. And just next to me is Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, who is a leadership and governance expert. Just next to him, we have Engineer Crispus Wathimba, who is also a leadership and governance expert. And also we have Nelson Sechere, who is Executive Director for the Veterans for Peace Kenya, who will be taking, going back to the Embu Stadium for the live program. And as you can see from the security personnel is that the head of state could be moments away from making his way to the Embu Stadium that is the host for the 60th Madaraka Day celebrations, just culminating into one-of-a-kind events. The soldiers are on standby. As you can see, the band is already ready, and any moment from now we will be getting to the official program. All the dignitaries are seated. We are only expecting the head of state. As you can see on your screen right now, we have two CSs. We have the transport CS, Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, and also we also have CS for Petroleum Davis Chirchir their way, and also we also have Ababu Namwamba, the CS for sports, and if I'm not wrong, that is the also the treasury. Njuguna Ndungu is also in attendance. Moses Kuria, the CS for trade, and we also have the CS for education, Ezekiel Machogu. We also have Kotusek Jen, Francis Atuoli there, also making his way. Just so clear indications that the head of state could be making his way any moment from now. As you can see from the vehicles that are jetting in there, the last minute preparations are already completed, and now we expecting the keynote address. We expect the president to touch on a number of issues that have been also trending in the country, including the contentious finance bill. We also expect him to touch on the budget, and also we also expect him to touch on the high cost of living that has also dogged the country. But it's not only the country. We also have the information, communication and digital economy, CS Eliud Owalo, also there. He is just getting into the stadium. So, and as I was saying earlier, is that we expect a number of issues the president to be touching on, including his government. You know, he has always emphasized on accountability, and he said that his government would be the first one to ensure that the CSs are held to account in terms of what they do and exactly what they did. Yesterday we have the CS for internal security and coordination of the government talking about the security measures that the country is taking. There where you can see those Embu County leaders, we have the women representative at the National Assembly, Pamela Njoki Njeru. We have so any moment from now,